Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Friends and neighbors of the House, hurt people hurt people. I look at this bill, and in my opinion, it shows a disconnect from our most vulnerable communities. This budget is heavily focused on penalties, when the priority should be answering the questions, how do we curb crime in the future? How do we reduce the recidivism rate in our state? And how do we support perpetrators and victims of crime and those who fall into both categories? I work with all age groups that have come into contact with the carceral system, middle schoolers, high schoolers, adults, and seniors, and they almost all share one thing in common. They have come from trauma. Trauma, paired with lack of access, breeds crime. Hurt people hurt people. In my opinion, our budgets should reflect that we understand this evidence-based and nonpartisan fact, and we care about our communities enough to do something about it. The answers to those questions, how we curb crime in the future and how we reduce the recidivism rate, lies in bolstering services that address trauma and addresses lack of access. I'm pleased to see there's an increase in corrections education. I'm a firm believer that a well-funded education has the ability to break down barriers. But unfortunately, this is not enough funding to adequately support our people who have slipped through the cracks. It's not enough to ensure that every person has the chance to get a meaningful education while incarcerated. Frankly, in my opinion, the budget for mental health and substance abuse is totally insufficient. A mere $28,000 for 8,648 people as of May, which exceeds Iowa's prison capacity by 1,658 individuals, by the way. This funding roughly amounts to $3.24 per person and shows how disconnected this majority is from the most vulnerable in our community and the supports that they need when they are incarcerated. If we know, as a well-educated body, that the vast majority of incarcerated Iowans also suffer from mental health issues, why is it not reflected in our budget? The reality is that the vast majority of perpetrators of violent crime have also been victims of violent crime. Again, this is a nonpartisan, evidence-based fact. I would like to share a story that speaks to the relevance of why this body should be prioritizing lowering recidivism rates in Iowa through adequate funding for mental health and substance abuse supports in our justice system. I work with a young woman in my community. She was sexually and physically abused by her own father since the age of 7 and comes from an extremely low-income family. She now takes care of her siblings and has a mother that struggles with addiction. I want you all to place yourselves in her shoes for a moment. Think of yourself growing up in a constant state of fear, fight or flight. Every time you see or hear or smell something that resembles the trauma that you have endured, your brain is triggered into fight or flight. Again, that's just science. Over time, your brain has conditioned you to always be in a state of fight or flight as a way to protect yourself. If you were her, would you suffer from mental health issues? I think the vast majority of us would say, duh, yes. When you're growing up, would you be able to show up to school every day with a clear and focused mind? Would you choose fight or would you choose flight? Given the nature of her experience and the trauma that she endured by her own father, the violence that was long and committed by one of the people in her life that was supposed to be a protector, her brain chose fight. Growing up, this young woman couldn't get enrolled in her school therapy because her mother never signed the paperwork due to the cost. She never finished high school and has self-medicated through drugs. This young woman has carried her unpacked trauma throughout her life and ended up in an Iowa prison due to her substance abuse issues and her assaulting another person. Again, hurt people hurt people. Crime is cyclical. It is predictable. Our incarcerated community needs mental health, substance abuse, and educational support, all of which could be helped through programs that would be funded through this budget. What's important to note is that her story isn't uncommon, it's not unusual, and it happens in every single one of our districts. If our schools aren't funded well enough to help children with trauma, if our community services aren't funded well enough to help those children who grow into adults with their trauma, our justice system has to be funded intentionally to catch the people who fall through the cracks. It is a matter of life or death for both victims and offenders, and those who are one and the same. I urge this body to vote no on this bill. Thank you.